You know that feeling when you're lying in bed at 2 a.m. and suddenly remember that awkward thing you said 3 weeks ago? Or when you catch yourself thinking about the job opportunity you didn't apply for, the conversation you avoided, or the risk you didn't take? These aren't life-altering mistakes we're talking about. They're tiny moments, split-second decisions that seem insignificant in the moment, but somehow stick with you like mental splinters. Most people think confidence comes from big wins and major achievements. But here's what I've discovered after years of studying human psychology and working with thousands of people. Your confidence isn't being destroyed by the major failures you can clearly identify. It's being quietly eroded by these micro-regrets, these small moments where you chose safety over growth, comfort over challenge.
Think about your last week. How many times did you hold back from speaking up in a meeting? How many times did you scroll past an interesting opportunity because it felt too risky? How many conversations did you avoid because they might be uncomfortable? Each of these moments creates a tiny crack in your self-image. You start to see yourself as someone who doesn't take action, someone who plays it safe, someone who lets opportunities slip by. The dangerous thing about micro-regrets is that they're so small they fly under your conscious radar. You don't even realize they're accumulating. But your subconscious mind, it's keeping score. Every time you choose the easy path, every time you avoid a challenge, every time you silence your authentic voice, you're essentially telling yourself that you don't believe you can handle the alternative. Here's where it gets really insidious. These micro-regrets don't just stay in the past, they start shaping your future decisions. You begin to expect less from yourself because you have evidence that you're someone who doesn't follow through. You start playing smaller because you've trained yourself to believe that's who you are.
I remember working with a client who couldn't figure out why she felt so stuck in her career. On paper, everything looked fine. Good job, decent salary, no major problems. But she felt like she was sleepwalking through her days. When we dug deeper, we discovered hundreds of tiny moments where she'd chosen silence over speaking up, where she'd chosen comfort over taking initiative. She'd become so used to playing it safe that she'd forgotten what it felt like to bet on herself. The science behind this is fascinating. Every decision you make literally rewires your brain. When you repeatedly choose avoidance, you strengthen those neural pathways. You become better at spotting reasons not to act, better at justifying why now isn't the right time, better at convincing yourself that small actions don't matter. But here's the beautiful thing about understanding this pattern. If micro-regrets can erode your confidence, then micro-actions can rebuild it. The same mechanism that's been working against you can start working for you. I want you to imagine your confidence as a bank account. Every time you honor a commitment to yourself, no matter how small, you make a deposit. Every time you speak up when you normally wouldn't, you make a deposit. Every time you take action despite feeling uncertain, you make a deposit. These deposits might seem insignificant individually, but they compound exponentially.
The key is starting ridiculously small. Don't try to transform your entire life overnight. That's just setting yourself up for another big regret. Instead, look for tiny opportunities to act in alignment with who you want to become. Send that email you've been putting off. Have that conversation you've been avoiding. Apply for that opportunity even if you don't feel completely ready. I learned this lesson the hard way. For years, I accumulated micro-regrets without even realizing it. I'd see opportunities and convince myself I wasn't ready. I'd have ideas and tell myself I'd act on them later. I'd feel impulses to connect with people and then talk myself out of it. All these tiny choices were slowly but surely convincing me that I was someone who didn't take action. The turning point came when I started paying attention to these moments. I began to notice the gap between my impulses and my actions. Instead of judging myself for it, I got curious. What was I really afraid of? What was the worst that could actually happen? And most importantly, what was the cost of continuing to choose comfort over growth? That's when I implemented what I call the 2-second rule. When I felt an impulse to take positive action, I gave myself exactly 2 seconds to act on it before my brain could talk me out of it. 2 seconds to send the message, make the call, or speak up. This simple practice started reversing years of accumulated micro-regrets. The results were remarkable. Not because of any single action I took, but because of how these small acts of courage began to shift my self-perception. I started to see myself as someone who follows through, someone who takes risks, someone who doesn't let opportunities slip by. This new identity then made it easier to take bigger actions, which reinforced the identity even more. Your confidence isn't built through affirmations or positive thinking alone. It's built through evidence. Every time you act despite uncertainty, you're creating evidence that you can handle discomfort. Every time you speak your truth, you're creating evidence that your voice matters. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you're creating evidence that you're someone who bets on themselves.
The most successful people I know aren't necessarily the most talented or the luckiest. They're the ones who learned early that confidence is a practice, not a feeling you wait for. They understand that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action in the presence of fear. So here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, I want you to pay attention to those moments where you feel an impulse to take positive action, but then hesitate. Don't judge these moments, just notice them. Then, in at least one of these moments each day, act within 2 seconds. Send the email, make the call, speak up, take the chance. You might be amazed at how quickly your relationship with yourself begins to shift. Those micro regrets that have been quietly undermining your confidence can be replaced with micro victories that quietly build it back up. The choice, as always, is yours. But remember, not choosing is also a choice, and it's one that your future self will either thank you for or regret.